Imagine spending the final, agonizing hours of your physical existence on this earth worrying about a stranger's bad haircut.
Oh, wow, yeah. That is a dark thought.
Right. Or, agonizing over a chipped fake nail. Or letting the fact that you got stuck in, Tuesday afternoon traffic absolutely ruin your finite, precious time.
It sounds so absurd when you actually frame it like that.
It really does. And on January 3rd, a 27-year-old woman from Grafton, New South Wales named Holly Butcher used some of her literal dying breaths to write a letter about precisely that.
Yeah, the absolute absurdity of what the healthy human brain chooses to care about.
Exactly. Just one day after she posted that letter to Facebook, she passed away from a really rare form of cancer. And within hours, her words were shared over 131,000 times.
Wriggling across the entire globe, yeah.
Right. So we aren't doing a dramatic reading today. We are treating this document as something much more profound. And for you listening right now, you are the crucial third person in this deep dive.
Welcome to the conversation.
Yeah, welcome. Because we are treating Holly's final letter as this hyper-rare psychological data set. It's a perfectly lucid, real-time documentation of the human ego dissolving.
And leaving behind this really hard-won wisdom about what actually matters when the clock is undeniably running out.
It's a phenomenal framing.
It really is. Because when you look at the immediate aftermath, you kind of have to ask yourself, why this specific post resonated so deeply across all these cultural and linguistic boundaries.
People from all walks of life.
Exactly. And her 30-year-old brother, Dean Butcher, he actually highlighted the core irony of it all. In her final weeks, he sat at her bedside and asked if she had any grand, big picture dreams she wanted him to fulfill for her.
Oh, that's heavy. What did she say?
Well, her response was completely devoid of ego. She said she was just going to live a simple life. She didn't have massive plans. She just wanted to live happily.
Wow. Which, that forces a massive question right out of the gate, because we live in an era that worships scale, right?
Oh, absolutely. The hustle culture.
Yeah. We measure a successful life by the size of the footprint left behind. Like how many industries you disrupted, how much capital you acquired, how famous you became.
Right. The metrics of modern success.
Exactly. Yet the deepest, most viral connection millions of people felt wasn't to, a complex philosophical treatise or a billionaire's memoir. It was to the simplest truths of a young woman who possessed zero ambition beyond ordinary happiness.
Which is fascinating.
Right. What does that reveal about our baseline psychological state?
I think it exposes a collective low-grade exhaustion with that whole metric of impact.
Exhaustion is the perfect word for it.
Yeah, because sociologically, we are constantly pushed to optimize every waking second, for maximum output.
Rise and grind, all of that.
Exactly. But when you strip away the socioeconomic conditioning, the fundamental human architecture just isn't designed for constant, massive disruption. It is designed for connection and stability.
So you're saying Holly's letter is almost like an antidote to that?
Yeah, it acts as a pressure release valve. It gives people permission to stop overcomplicating their existence. She essentially proves that profound meaning isn't found at the apex of a corporate ladder.
It's hidden right in the middle of the ordinary life.
Right. The ordinary life we are usually too busy ignoring.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's dig into how she actually dismantles that ignorance, because she starts by addressing the massive psychological elephant in the room. Mortality.
The ultimate taboo.
Right. She writes, "It's a strange thing to realize and accept your mortality at 26 years young." She notes that it's just one of those things you ignore.
Yeah, the days tick by and you simply expect they'll keep on coming.
Now, obviously, we all know we are going to die. That's a given. But there is a massive cognitive dissonance, right, between knowing it as a biological fact and accepting it as an imminent reality.
Exactly. What she is describing is the collapse of a very specific psychological defense mechanism.
Tell me more about that. What is the mechanism?
Well, in cognitive psychology, there is this framework called terror management theory.
Terror management theory.
Okay. Yeah, it posits that human beings are entirely unique because we possess a cognitive capacity to understand our own inevitable demise.
Which is terrifying, if you really think about it.
Exactly. If we actually sat with that terrifying reality every minute of every day, we would just be paralyzed by existential dread. We couldn't function.
So our brains just, block it out?
Pretty much. Our brains construct what are basically psychological firewalls. We build cultural systems, we chase wealth, we focus obsessively on our calendar.
All the busy work.
Right. All of it is to create a buffer against the reality of death. We operate on this baseline assumption of continuity.
It's like watching a movie, right? You assume you're only in the first act. The brain acts as this predictive engine. It looks at yesterday, sees that we woke up and drank coffee, looks at today, sees the exact same thing.
And inherently projects an unbroken line into tomorrow.
Yes. Into next year, and 50 years from now, we inherently expect to see ourselves get old, wrinkled, and gray, surrounded by grandkids, which she explicitly mentions was what she wanted so bad it hurts.
Yeah, that part of the letter is crushing.
But when a terminal diagnosis enters the chat, or the screen suddenly goes black at age 27, it just shatters that fundamental contract we think we have with time. That predictive engine completely breaks down.
The firewall collapses, and the psychological term for that is mortality salience, the acute hyper-awareness of one's own death.
Mortality salience.
Yeah. When mortality becomes highly salient, as it obviously did for Holly at 26, the brain can no longer rely on the illusion of infinite time to defer meaning. That is exactly what forces the extreme clarity she writes with.
The clarity is just piercing. She follows her opening by stating that life is, quote, fragile, precious, and unpredictable, and each day is a gift, not a given right.
Which is such a powerful distinction.
Well, I want to push back on the phrasing for a second because, we hear life is a gift all the time. It's on bumper stickers, greeting cards, coffee mugs at discount stores.
It's a total cliche.
Right. It has been stripped of all its gravity. But when a 27-year-old who is actively fighting a losing biological battle for her life uses those exact words, how does that change the weight of the words for you?
It completely alters the underlying mechanism of the phrase. It ceases to be this inspirational platitude and becomes a literal description of power dynamics.
How do you mean?
Well, when we flippantly say life is a gift, we usually mean, we should try to enjoy our weekend or be grateful for a sunny day.
Sure, toxic positivity almost.
Exactly. But when Holly says it, she is pointing to the inherent vulnerability of the human condition. A gift is something granted by an external force, and by definition, it can be rescinded at any moment without your consent.
Wow. Yeah, it's not a contractual right.
Exactly. You are not owed a Thursday?
You are not owed a Thursday. That is incredibly heavy. And you feel that agonizing tension in her very next sentences. She writes, I don't want to go. I love my life. I am happy. I owe that to my loved ones. But the control is out of my hands.
The total lack of control.
Right. There's this excruciating friction between her intense, vibrant gratitude for her existence and her total lack of biological agency. And what I find so fascinating is how that lack of agency translates into a deep frustration with the people around her.
Yes, specifically how society handles the topic of her dying. This is a really critical sociological observation she makes.
Because it made her so isolated, right?
Right. She writes that she didn't want to make death feared, and she actually appreciates that people are mostly ignorant of its inevitability. But then she hits this wall.
The taboo wall.
Exactly. She says, except when I want to talk about it, and it's treated as a taboo topic that will never happen to any of us, that's been a bit tough.
This raises an important question, though. Why do we do that? Why does society force the person who is actually doing the dying to comfort the living by avoiding the topic?
Because of that exact terror management theory we just discussed.
Ah, right. The firewall.
Yep. When a healthy person sits across from a dying 27-year-old, the healthy person's psychological firewall is severely threatened. Holly's mere presence acts as this mirror, reminding everyone else of their own fragility.
So they panic.
Exactly. To protect their own comfort, people instinctively change the subject, minimize the reality, or enforce that toxic positivity you mentioned earlier.
Oh, you'll beat this. Don't talk like that.
Right. And the perverse result is that the person actually facing the ultimate existential transition is forced into total emotional isolation. They carry the heaviest weight imaginable entirely alone, simply to protect the fragile denial of the healthy.
That is wild. I am dying, but let me make sure you feel comfortable during dinner. It is a completely backward social contract.
It really is.
And because she was pushed into that isolation, she spent a lot of time alone with her thoughts, particularly in the middle of the night. She specifically mentions that her thoughts formed when the distractions faded.
The midnight reflection.
Yes. And that is when she conducts what we might call an absolute audit of human annoyance. She takes 0 prisoners here.
Oh, she really goes for it. The time when the cognitive load of the day drops to 0, and the mind is forced to evaluate what truly holds weight. Her critique of what the rest of us complain about isn't just sharp. It's a profound unmasking of our evolutionary mismatched priorities.
She observes people whinging, complaining about what she sees as absolutely ridiculous, minor annoyances. And she uses a masterclass of specificity here. She doesn't speak in abstracts at all.
No, she calls out hyper-specific things.
Getting caught in bad traffic, losing sleep because your beautiful baby's kept you awake, a hairdresser cutting your hair too short, a chipped fake nail, boobs being too small, or having cellulite on your arse and a wobbling belly.
I mean, these are the highly specific, hyper-relatable micro-complaints that consume a massive percentage of our daily cognitive bandwidth.
We really do. But why do we care so much about a chipped nail?
To understand why we do this, we have to look at evolutionary biology again. The human brain is hardwired to identify and fixate on problems to ensure survival.
Look out for the bear. Watch out for the snake.
Exactly. But in the modern world, we rarely face actual saber-toothed tigers or existential threats. Because the brain still needs to problem solve, it takes whatever proximal minor inconvenience is directly in front of us.
Like the traffic jam.
Right, or the chipped nail, and it artificially inflates it to life or death emotional stakes. We experience a massive stress response to completely trivial things because we just lack genuine perspective.
But I have to ask, so what does this all mean? Obviously, in the grand scheme, a bad haircut is nothing. But to the person living an ordinary Tuesday, if my car breaks down and I'm late for a major meeting, my cortisol spikes.
Of course it does.
My frustration feels incredibly real to me in that moment. Is she saying we aren't allowed to be annoyed?
Not at all. And her nuance here is what elevates the letter from, like, a guilt trip to genuine philosophical utility. She clarifies this beautifully.
What does she say?
She writes, "It's okay to acknowledge that something is annoying, but try not to carry on about it and negatively affect other people's days." The psychological mechanism she is targeting isn't the initial involuntary emotion response. It is the subsequent choice to ruminate.
The indulgence, the wallowing in it.
Exactly. Experiencing annoyance is just a biological reflex. Endlessly complaining about it, letting it hijack your mood, and spreading that toxicity to your coworkers or family, that is a behavioral choice.
It's about proportion.
Yes. The failure isn't feeling annoyed. The failure is lacking the self-awareness to step back, view the chipped nail against the macro backdrop of your entire existence, and purposely de-escalate your own reaction. When you look at life as a whole, these things are vastly insignificant.
Let all that shit go, is how she bluntly puts it.
She doesn't mince words.
No, she doesn't. And she forces that proportional response with one of the most gut-wrenching contrasts I've ever read. While someone is gripping their steering wheel, having an absolute meltdown over gridlock traffic, she writes, "I am watching my body waste away before my eyes with nothing I can do about it."
It just stops you right in your tracks.
It really does. Her singular desperate wish isn't for wealth or status. It is just for one more birthday or Christmas with her family, or one more day with her partner and dog.
She weaponizes her own tragedy to shock the reader out of their hedonic treadmill.
The hedonic treadmill, can you explain that?
Yeah, so the hedonic treadmill is the psychological concept that humans constantly return to a baseline level of happiness no matter what happens to them, meaning we're constantly finding new, minor things to complain about, even when things are objectively fine.
So we just adapt to the good stuff and start complaining again.
Exactly. By placing her decaying body next to our traffic jam, she completely shatters that treadmill.
She highlights the privilege of being healthy enough to sit in traffic, which, for you listening, is something to deeply internalize. The next time you are furious about gridlock tomorrow morning, imagine trading places with someone who would surrender every asset they own just to possess the biological vitality required to sit in that driver's seat and be annoyed.
It fundamentally shifts how we view the human body.
Which leads right into an enormous thematic chunk of her letter. She totally redefines our entire relationship with our physical selves.
She addresses the really pervasive modern habit of treating the body primarily as an aesthetic project rather than a functional miracle.
Function over aesthetic.
Yes. She notes how people complain about the burden of going to work or the physical discomfort of exercise. And her retort is stark. Be grateful your body is physically able to do it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. You might assume that someone dying of a terminal illness would just say, throw it all away, health doesn't matter, eat garbage, do whatever.
Right, a kind of physical nihilism.
Exactly. But Holly herself explicitly states that living a healthy life was her major passion. She isn't dismissing health, she is redefining it. How does she reconcile the directive to accept a wobbling belly with her passion for extreme health?
Well, she separates aesthetics from mechanics. She shifts the paradigm of the body from an ornamental object to a functional vehicle. Her passion for health wasn't about achieving a certain look, you know. It was about maintaining the vehicle so it could experience life.
I love that. A functional vehicle.
She urges us to appreciate a functioning body, quote, even if it isn't your ideal size. Move it, nourish it with fresh food. But the critical pivot is her warning. Don't obsess over it.
Obsession is where the mechanism breaks down.
Right. And she builds this multidimensional matrix of true health. Physical health is only one pillar. She separates physical health from total well-being.
So what are the other pillars?
She challenges the reader to work just as hard on finding mental, emotional, and spiritual happiness. Because if you actually cultivate those internal pillars, the external pressure of what she calls the stupidly portrayed perfect social media body completely evaporates into insignificance.
And that realization triggers her deeply aggressive stance on digital consumption. The social media purge.
Oh, she goes hard on this.
She really does. She says to delete any account that makes you feel like garbage about yourself, whether it's a friend or a total stranger.
Because social media is not a passive environment. It is a highly engineered ecosystem designed by thousands of engineers to hijack your dopamine receptors and exploit human insecurities, just to keep you scrolling.
Think of your social media feed as your mental diet, right? If you sat at a restaurant and the waiter kept bringing you toxic food, a substance that chemically induced feelings of inadequacy, self-loathing, and depression, you wouldn't keep eating it just because the waiter went to high school with you.
No, you'd leave.
You would flip the table and leave. So why do we passively consume images that sell a stupidly portrayed perfect body every single morning?
That is precisely why her language here is so combative.
Yeah.
She says, friend or not, be ruthless for your own well-being.
Be ruthless. That's a powerful phrase.
The word ruthless is key there. Reclaiming your mental health from algorithmic manipulation requires active, hostile curation of your inputs. You literally cannot be passive about it.
It's a defense of your own consciousness. And once she strips away the complaints and the physical insecurities, she turns her attention outward to how we interact with the material world.
The economics of the end.
Yes. And her observations on the psychology of money are fascinating because she experiences a complete collapse of consumerist ideology.
She writes, it's a weird thing having money to spend at the end when you're dying. The illusion of materialism just completely evaporates for her.
What's fascinating here is why does the impending end of life so thoroughly dismantle the desire to buy things? Buying a new dress or jewelry suddenly feels utterly absurd to her.
Because modern consumerism is entirely reliant on the illusion of the future.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Well, when you buy a new dress or a piece of jewelry or even a couch, you aren't just buying the physical object. You are purchasing the anticipated future experience of utilizing that object to gain social status, comfort, or aesthetic pleasure over time.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, money is fundamentally a tool for deferred gratification. When the future is erased by a terminal diagnosis, the tool becomes completely useless. The temporal runway required for a material purchase to deliver its psychological payload no longer exists.
Buying a new dress to wear on a deathbed suddenly exposes the inherent absurdity of the transaction.
Exactly. She realizes that the dopamine hit we get from retail therapy is just a temporary distraction from a lack of true connection.
But she doesn't just, decry capitalism and tell everyone to burn their wallets. She provides a highly specific alternative mechanism. She shifts the instruction from buying things to gifting connection.
She provides a manual for how to deploy resources when the objective changes from status signaling to emotional bonding. She explicitly tells her readers to stop buying friends beauty products or jewelry for weddings. Nobody actually cares if you wear the same dress twice. Instead, she says, buy them something kind.
Buy them a meal. Or better yet, cook for them. Buy them a plant, a massage, or a candle. And my absolute favorite phrase in the entire letter, cup their coffee.
Cup their coffee. It's incredibly evocative.
It really is. What does that mean to you sociologically?
It isn't just about paying for the beverage. It's the physical shared presence. It implies sitting across from someone, holding the warm mug, and actually occupying the same temporal space. It's grounding.
But the crucial detail, the absolute linchpin of this entire philosophy, is the instruction she gives for the moment of the handoff. She writes that you must tell them you love them when you give it to them.
The plant or the candle is utterly irrelevant.
Exactly. The physical item is just a vehicle, a Trojan horse to breach the awkwardness of human vulnerability. It is an excuse to establish eye contact and deliver the actual payload, which is the emotional connection.
The transaction of capital is entirely subverted into a transaction of intimacy.
And she illustrates the friction of this transition with this brilliant anecdote about her family's final Christmas together. They collectively agreed to a no-present Christmas.
Which is such a hard thing to actually execute.
She admits it was hard. She says the tree looked sad and bare, and she almost cracked on Christmas Eve. And that feeling is so universal, that deep, socially conditioned panic, that if you don't exchange consumer goods, the holiday will somehow be devoid of meaning or love.
The social conditioning surrounding holiday consumerism is a multi-billion-dollar behavioral trap. We have been trained since childhood to equate the volume of wrapped boxes with the volume of affection. By refusing to participate, her family had to sit in the uncomfortable void of that unfulfilled expectation.
But pushing through that discomfort yielded an incredible result. Without the frantic, exhausting pressure of mall shopping, the family redirected all that latent energy into writing deeply meaningful cards for each other.
And Holly adds this flash of profound, almost dark humor to it.
Oh, the weirdness of it.
Yeah. She points out how incredibly weird it would be for her family to spend money buying her a physical present, fully knowing they would likely end up inheriting it right back themselves in a matter of weeks.
She literally writes the word weird.
It's a stark, almost jarring reminder of the biological reality she was navigating. But the takeaway for the listener is incredibly clear. Presents are not needed for a meaningful Christmas. The underlying desire isn't for objects, it is for validation and connection.
Her directive regarding material obsession is a blunt command to just move on.
Move on to the only currency that actually holds intrinsic value.
Which is time. Time is the ultimate currency. Time is the ultimate non-renewable recourse. You can always make more money. You can never manufacture another minute. And because of that, she levels a fierce critique at people who are chronically late.
She writes, "Value other people's time. Don't keep them waiting because you are crap at being on time."
It's a sign of disrespect. Right?
In sociological terms, chronic lateness is often an unconscious assertion of hierarchy, or a narcissistic assumption that one's own schedule supersedes the collective.
She frames preparation as a baseline sign of respect. When you are staring down the barrel of a terminal illness, you realize how agonizingly finite time is. Wasting someone else's finite life minutes because you couldn't be bothered to leave your house 10 minutes earlier. It shifts from a minor annoyance to a profound violation of respect.
And her critique of time management doesn't stop at punctuality. She moves into a deep analysis of how we actually occupy the time we are given. Experiencing versus capturing.
Oh, the modern disease of living through a screen.
Exactly. She implores people to enjoy the bloody moment rather than trying to capture the perfect photo for everyone else.
Imagine being at the most transcendent, beautiful live music event of your life. The bass is thumping in your chest, the crowd is electric. Instead of letting the sensory experience wash over you, instead of feeling it, you pull out a device.
Right, you hold it up in front of your face.
And you watch this magnificent three-dimensional immersive event happen inches away through a tiny, distorted 4-inch screen.
You are physically present, but cognitively absent. The psychological term is the distraction of documentation.
That perfectly describes it.
When your brain is focused on framing a photo, adjusting lighting, and anticipating the social media validation of posting the image, it physically cannot encode the actual sensory experience into long-term memory. You are sacrificing your own lived reality to curate an exhibit for an audience of strangers.
That is so bleak. But to combat that cognitive absence, Holly provides a visceral, highly specific checklist for grounding yourself in the physical world. She talks about the Aussie air.
Her grounding techniques are beautiful.
She demands that you get out and take a deep breath of fresh Aussie air deep into your lungs. She tells you to notice how blue the sky is, how green the trees are, to make the effort to do the day trip to the beach.
To physically dip your feet in the water, dig your toes in the sand, and wet your face with salt water.
Get up early, listen to the birds, watch the colors of the sunrise. These are incredibly visceral.
And these aren't just poetic musings, they are somatic grounding techniques. When the human brain is overwhelmed by abstract anxieties, career trajectories, social status, digital notifications, it disconnects from the body.
So these sensory details snap you back.
Yes. The cold salt water, the sound of birds, or the physical warmth of cuddling a dog, they force the nervous system to immediately snap back into the present moment. They represent the simple life she and her brother Dean spoke of.
And what strikes me about this entire list, the beach, the sky, the dog, the sunrise, is the complete absence of capital requirement. Every single one of these actions costs exactly $0. They require absolutely nothing from you except your presence.
Which brings us full circle back to that conversation with her brother. When the complex, artificial scaffolding of modern society is stripped away by the undeniable truth of impending death, what remains is the immense, profound beauty of the baseline physical world.
She is begging you, the listener, to anchor yourself in the present reality before it's too late. And anchoring yourself requires detaching yourself from external expectations.
Which brings us to a very rebellious part of the letter.
Rebellious contentment. This might be the most subversive section of her entire piece. She takes direct aim at the modern pressure to live a so-called fulfilling life.
Right, she writes, don't feel pressure to do what other people might think is a fulfilling life. You might want a mediocre life, and that is completely okay.
We live in a culture obsessed with hustle, optimization, and leaving a massive legacy. Is striving for a mediocre life actually a form of modern rebellion?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Western culture has aggressively conflated the word mediocre with failure.
Right. If you aren't optimizing every minute, starting a side hustle, building a brand, you're losing.
Exactly. But Holly reclaims the word mediocre, not as a lack of effort, but as a deliberate rejection of manufactured external expectations. It is a state of rebellious contentment. She is validating the desire to simply exist.
To work a normal job just to pay the bills, to find immense joy in small things, to flatly refuse to owe the world a spectacular, exhausting performance of success.
Working to live rather than living to work.
Eating the cake with zero guilt. Saying no to things you don't actually want to do without feeling like you are falling behind in some imaginary race.
But, and this is a vital distinction, her acceptance of a simple life does not equate to tolerating misery.
No, not at all.
She creates a very clear distinction between a peaceful, simple life and a life trapped in toxic endurance. She issues a fierce call to action regarding personal agency, the power to eradicate misery.
She insists that you have the power to change what makes you miserable. Whether in work or love, she writes, have the guts to change. You don't know how much time you have left, so staying in a miserable situation is the ultimate waste of your most precious resource.
The psychological trap here is the sunk cost fallacy.
People stay in miserable jobs or suffocating relationships because they have already invested years into them, right?
Yeah, or because the unknown feels more terrifying than familiar pain. But Holly's perspective shifts the math completely. When you realize the clock is ticking down to an unknown midnight, the perceived safety of a miserable routine is exposed as an illusion.
It requires immense courage to blow up your life in pursuit of happiness. But she is telling us that it requires far more tragic, pointless endurance to stay miserable.
You are trading the precious, unguaranteed days of your biological existence for a guarantee of misery.
Have the guts to change. And as she winds down this extraordinary document, she pivots from philosophical analysis into a highly practical legacy of giving. She types out the words in all caps, give, give, give.
She experiences this profound realization that human happiness is intrinsically linked to altruism. Doing things for others brings more happiness than doing things for yourself.
She notes her gratitude for the incredible kindness of family, friends, and total strangers during her illness. But she doesn't end the letter on vague, warm sentiments. She transitions to her one last thing. Her parting request isn't philosophical. It's highly practical and actionable.
Donate blood.
Donate blood. It is such an incredibly sharp pivot. After deconstructing the nature of time, the ego, the body, and consumerism, she zeroes right in on the hyper-specific act of blood donation.
Because the ROI, the return on investment of that single, simple act is staggering, and she understands it on a molecular level.
Break that down for us.
She explains it mathematically for the reader. Every single donation can save 3 lives. It is a massive, tangible impact that any ordinary person can have through a process that requires almost zero effort.
And for Holly, it wasn't just a clinical statistic. It was intimately, biologically personal. She reveals that blood donation, what she describes as more bags than I could count, was the literal mechanism that kept her alive for 1 extra year.
An extra year.
Think about the weight of what that 1 extra year meant to her. It wasn't just borrowed time ticking away monotonously on a hospital wall clock. It was 365 days she actually got to spend here on this planet, breathing the air, surrounded by her family, her friends, and her dog.
resulting in, as she says, some of the greatest times of my life.
You listening to this right now are directly confronted with this reality. You likely possess the biological capacity to give a complete stranger the greatest year of their life. Your body continuously produces a renewable resource that can literally grant someone the time required to dip their toes in the sand to eat the cake or to tell their family they love them one last time.
It is the ultimate subversion of consumerism. You cannot buy life at a mall, but you can literally give it away for free.
And with that final, powerful directive, she signs off the letter. Until we meet again, Hal Oxo.
An invitation to live better right now.
Holly Butcher didn't set out to be a philosopher. She just wanted to live a simple life. But in her final days, facing the total collapse of her own timeline, she provided all of us with a masterclass in psychological clarity. She separated the meaningless noise of modern existence from the deeply meaningful signal of human connection.
From forgiving cellulite to ditching toxic social media, from skipping Christmas presents to donating blood.
Her viral letter is not a tragic document about dying. It is an urgent, meticulously detailed invitation to engage with the present moment before the screen goes black, which leaves us with one final thought for you to carry with you.
Yeah, the lingering question.
At the beginning of this deep dive, we talked about the illusion of continuity, the biological trick our brains play to convince us we have limitless time to fix things later. But if you were to sit down tonight in the quiet, distraction-free middle of the night, just as Holly did, and you ran a ruthless audit of your own daily annoyances.
The traffic, the work stress, the chipped nail.
Right. If you weighed all of that against the undeniable, ticking fact of your own mortality, what is the very first thing you would suddenly have the guts to completely let go of tomorrow morning?